few media people here, and you are free to ask any questions as we always do, and be civil and respectful. And again, once again, I want to thank all of you for being here. So,
good afternoon, all the people on the dais. I hope you had a beautiful lunch. I have two questions, one very general and one very specific. My first question is to Mr. Michael Brandt from Germany. Whenever such things like this, like big gathering of MPs from abroad, or whenever His Holiness Dalai Lama goes around the world, they are always very alert and they try to sabotage the Tibetan events, such as by asking the members of parliament not to attend this kind of events, or not to meet the Dalai Lama when he is abroad. And many countries around the world, not individual MPs, but MPs governments around the world seem to succumb to the Chinese call. And many a times, many leaders don't meet with the Dalai Lama. And why is it that? Because other countries are not China. They are sovereign countries, but still they seem to listen to the Chinese demand. And this is for us is very astonishing, very confusing, and at the same time feel that what a shame. So I would like to Mr. Michael to reply on that. And my second question is to the two Canadian MPs, Mr. Garnett and Ms. Linda. I'm someone who feels about all the lives, and there are about 50 Tibetans trying to get asylum in Canada. And I don't know how much it matters for other people, but their life matters for me. They have been refused asylum in Canada, saying that in India now the government of India has started giving citizenship to Tibetans in India. Someone filed a case in the Indian court in Delhi, and the court decided in favor of that person, saying that Tibetans who were born in India between 1950 and 1987, and their children are eligible Indian citizens. And that person happens to be me, in fact. So, on the basis of that court decision, the Indian government is saying, see, now you can get asylum in India, or you can become a citizen of India, so you have to go to India. But the situation is not so smooth like what they imagine, or think, or believe. For example, once a Tibetan gets, like for me, for example, I get an Indian citizenship, and normally majority of the Tibetans are in Tibetan settlements. And the Indian government says, once you get Indian citizenship, you have to leave the Tibetan settlement. So it's not like once you become Indian citizen, here's your housing, here's your Medicare, here's your employment, here's other benefits, nothing like that. So it's a genuine problem. And while having this genuine problem, they're not seeing this situation, and what can you do in this regard? Thank you very much.
So I start answering. Yes. So I want to speak in my language. Maybe Kai, you can translate. Is it possible?
From Germany?
Yeah. No, this Kai.
Yeah.
But thank you very much. But thank you very much. Also ich teile die Einschätzung absolut. Ich kann kein Land verstehen, das den Dalai Lama nicht empfängt. Im Übrigen gibt es mehrere Länder in Europa, zum Beispiel Norwegen, dort. Yeah, sorry. So I'm faster in my own language, you see.
So I share this assessment. I don't really understand a country that doesn't want to greet and welcome the Dalai Lama. Norway, for example.
Norwegen, wo der Dalai Lama den Friedensnobelpreis bekommen hat.
Where the Dalai Lama got the Nobel Peace Prize.
Ich bin froh, dass die Bundeskanzlerin in Deutschland den Dalai Lama im Bundeskanzleramt in Berlin 2007 empfangen hat und eingeladen hat.
I'm happy that the German Chancellor has received, invited and received the Dalai Lama to Berlin and met him at the German Chancellery in Berlin.
Normal wird die Situation erst sein, wenn nicht mehr die Frage auftaucht, wer wann, wen, wo trifft. Das gilt für den Dalai Lama wie für Lobsang Sangay.
And it's going to be, the situation is going to be normal again when there is not going to be the question anymore who is going to meet the Dalai Lama, when, where, and the same goes for Dr. Lobsang Sangay.
Wir haben große Diskussionen gehabt vor dem Menschenrechtsrat in Genf, auch innerhalb der Europäischen Union.
We've had a discussion, quite intense discussion among the European Union members at the Human Rights Council in Geneva.
Und ich kann nur sagen, jedes Land, das sich kleiner macht, als es ist, verrät die eigenen Werte, Demokratie und Menschenrechte.
And I can just say every country that belittles itself, that makes itself smaller than it is, betrays on its own fundamental values of human rights and democracy.
Und ich glaube noch eins, es gibt ja auch viele, die hier sitzen, die Probleme mit der chinesischen Botschaft, Sie haben das angesprochen, haben, weil sie Freunde Tibets sind.
And as you've said, there are quite a number of people who have got into problems or who got problems with the Chinese embassy, for example, just because they are friends of Tibet.
Ich bin Christ, ich setze mich ein aus Überzeugung für die Religionsfreiheit und für die Tibeter und andere.
I'm a Christian, and out of my conviction I stand up for other people's rights for Tibetans and for others.
Seit 3,5 Jahren darf ich nicht mehr nach China einreisen und ich glaube, es ist an der Zeit, dass Staaten wie Deutschland, wie andere europäische Länder oder außerhalb Europas darüber nachdenken. Ich dachte, seit 3,5 Jahren nicht mehr nach China.
For 3.5 years, I've not been able to travel to China.
Und ich fordere, dass die Länder, die mit Einreiseverboten belegt werden, von den Vereinigten Staaten bis nach Europa, bis nach Australien, ich kann nur für mein Land reden, aber eine neue Regelung auf den Weg bringen sollten, dass für jeden, der nicht mehr einreisen darf, auch Mitglieder, Diplomaten der chinesischen Regierung im gleichen Verhältnis auch nicht einreisen dürfen, weil ich glaube, es braucht auch ein Zeichen.
I think there should be an understanding among those countries whose representatives or parliamentarians are not able to travel to China or Tibet, that there should be some reckoning with this, some response in the sense that there may be some sort of measure that may also prohibit or sort of sanction the traveling of relevant Chinese officials.
Ich bin ein Freund Chinas, aber nicht der chinesischen Regierung.
I'm a friend of China, but not of the Chinese government.
In meinem Land sagt man immer, man darf Kritik nicht so laut aussprechen, damit die chinesische Regierung ihr Gesicht nicht verliert.
So, in my country, it's often said you should not be so explicit on your criticism on China because the Chinese would lose face.
Wenn wir uns als Staaten aber kleiner machen gegenüber der chinesischen Regierung, verlieren auch wir das Gesicht.
But if we make ourselves smaller vis-à-vis the Chinese government, it's actually us losing face.
Meine letzte Bemerkung.
My last remark.
Das Wichtigste aus meiner Sicht ist, wir dürfen uns an das Unrecht in Tibet nicht gewöhnen. Die Staatengemeinschaft darf sich nicht an das Unrecht in Tibet länger gewöhnen.
I think the most important thing is that the international community, we, all of us, we should not get accustomed or should not get used to the injustices in Tibet.
Die Blutspur aus dem Jahr 1959 ist heute in Urumqi angekommen. Es gibt eine Verbindung zwischen Tibet, dem Leid der Tibeter und der Uiguren.
The trail of blood that has started in 1959 is now to be seen in Xinjiang, in Urumqi, in Xinjiang. There is a direct connection between these two developments.
It's called partly hypocrisy. you'll find, if you look at what's happening in the world today, if I give an example of United States and North Korea, you'll see someone like Donald Trump talking about the fact that he's in love with Kim Jong-un, the North Korean leader, who is probably the North Korean leader and that system the worst abuser of human rights in the world. There are others which are very bad, like China, but North Korea stands out to me as the worst. So he will come out and fall over himself to try to embrace the North Korean leader. And then you have Venezuela, on the other hand, where he'll be talking about sanctioning the country, closing it down in order to remove Maduro, who is also an abuser of human rights, is also a dictator, but certainly not on the same scale as North Korea. So that's the hypocrisy that I'm talking about. Then there's also self-interest, because you'll find countries who have traditionally been the supporters of trying to entrench and get others where there's a deficit in democracy, to stand up and adopt the principles of democracy, all the principles of democracy. But then they won't come out that strongly on this issue of Tibet. And some of them, like in my own country, will also then try to prevent one meeting His Holiness the Dalai Lama. That's my personal experience. So how do you change from one, because the present administration in Botswana is the same party that I belong to. The man who's the president now was my vice president when we invited the Dalai Lama here. So when we invited the Dalai Lama, we underwent a lot of pressure from the Chinese government, a lot. And they threatened all sorts of things. So when I talk about self-interest, I'm talking about the fact that because China is the second largest economy, some governments obviously think of what will be the... Here I am now, and the government bent over backwards to try to prevent me coming here. But I am here. And I think that sends a strong message that whether I'm in office or not in office, I will still abide by those same principles and urge others. And like I said earlier on, commend all those who are up here for having, because I'm sure some of them also came under the same pressure.
So we, as very active parliamentarians from different parliaments, we are there, and we, of course, we are also under pressure by the Chinese people. Normally the people from China, they don't intervene also by ambassadors. Very often we have only the information from the Chinese press. So that we got the information that we have to protest. It's absolutely impossible that you are there. Why, Mr. Mann, are you again in Tibet, or why, no, for the Tibetan people here, small Tibet. So why do you always interact? I say, it's my mission, because we are based on human rights. European Parliament is the voice of human rights. So we have to realize it. So we cannot be silent. But also there were other MEPs in the European Parliament, and they said, no hesitation, I follow your ideas, no doubt. I'm in favor of human rights. I'm in favor of the Tibetan cause, in favor of the middle way approach, no doubt. But please, we have no chance to be on the photo. We have no chance to have the assistance there when you have your actual meetings, because we are under pressure. We are controlled. Also in the European Parliament, there are excellent information for the people from the Chinese embassy. They know what's behind. Although when we have the visit here, we didn't inform them, but they are informed. So they have an excellent information system. Also we have a blockage on our internet, so we don't know who is behind, but that's why sometimes parliamentarians, they hesitate to be on the conferences. They only send some of the stagiaires and sometimes the assistance, but not more. But they say, please continue your way. I cannot do it because I want to be elected again. You know. So this is the crazy situation. Very often the people are behind it. And then my last remark: whenever we have visitors in our Tibet intergroup, they very often they ask, but you are around about 80 or 85 people, yes, around about 100, and there are only 20 people here in this room. I said, yes, for safety reasons, the people, they don't have any chance. So these are our conditions within the European Parliament, and I think we have similar situation in other parliaments. So what can we do? Should we be silent? Never. Should we try to hesitate not to be informed on the agenda? No, no, just the opposite. We should have resolutions, we should have open talks, and also the people, they should know who is on the agenda. And if the others, they are hesitating, so we have to do it. It's a question of courage, and it's a question of realization of human rights and nothing else.
Just to briefly comment on the first question, to add to what others have said, I think the path of cowering, cowardice, and concession is morally wrong, but it's also strategically foolish. China doesn't trade with our country because it's generous. It trades with our country because it's in its economic interest to do so. So when we, in a consistent way, take strong positions on behalf of human rights, there will be threats, there will be all kinds of counter-narratives thrown out there. But at the end of the day, they will do what's in their interest, which in the case of Canada was significant increases in trade flows, even at a time when we had a prime minister that was willing to host the Dalai Lama. So I think it's important to underline that the path of strength and courage when it comes to these issues is morally right, but also, but it doesn't undermine our strategic interests. I don't believe. On the issue of Tibetan asylum claimants in Canada, so in general terms, Canada welcomes refugees through a number of different channels, and you know, one is the channel where people come to Canada and then claim asylum on Canadian soil. Other channels involve people getting sponsorship from the government to come, or sponsorship from private individuals and organizations. The asylum determinations are made independently, but I think you know, this is important information that we've been receiving about these cases, and we've had some good conversations recently, even while we're here. So I'll commit to you and to those who are following this that certainly this is something we will look into. We'll explore what the nature of those asylum determinations were. In general, those should be made through an independent process, but it's important for us as politicians to look into that and figure out whether or not things are being evaluated based on the correct information. At the same time, Canada has, in the past, welcomed many Tibetan refugees through other channels. I mentioned during the time of the previous government, when my party was in government, we were pleased to welcome 1,000 Tibetans living in India to come to Canada as refugees. Again, that wasn't through the asylum system. Those were people that were in India, were identified, and were brought to Canada through that particular refugee channel.
Yeah, it's a particular problem, of course, for Tibetans because you're stateless. And of course, the general rule is if you're seeking asylum as a refugee, it's the third country rule. You are seeking asylum from India. I am undertaking to look into that, about if in the past we have accepted that though you have resided here in India, and India's been very kind, that in fact you're seeking asylum from Tibet beyond your control. Of course, there are many in the world now suffering strife who are seeking asylum, and the most recent were the Syrians. From the party I'm from, in the opposition, we've been asking the government to lift the cap on the number of refugees. We're also asking to open up for more family sponsorships, community sponsorships of refugees, and also opening up more for family reunification. I know that that's been a stressful matter for Tibetans. I received, actually just walking around with one of my Tibetan friends here, a plea on behalf of another group. There are complications as well, because there are some Tibetans who have come to Canada on a visitor visa, or if he comes a student visa. But what happens is you have a red flag in your file if all of a sudden you say, no, actually I want to seek refugee status. And that can prejudice others in future who genuinely want to come for a visit or want to come to study. And it has happened in the past where they say, well, we don't believe you, because what you're really going to want to do is stay and seek refugee status. I don't know about this issue of whether or not Canada can look into, oh, well, we have heard through rumor or maybe through diplomatic sources that in fact India will provide citizenship. But you are telling us here that there are limitations on that. Beyond that, I just want to thank our Tibetans in Canada for bringing me here. I'm one of the ones who received the message when I was already here from the Chinese embassy, and I look forward to meeting with them when I return and telling them what a wonderful time I had here and how many nations are embracing Tibet. It's of course complicated in Canada right now because there's a dispute, we're caught in the middle between the United States and China. And as a result, it's most likely 2 Canadians in China have been arrested and imprisoned. And so it's a level of utmost difficulty for the Canadian government right now. In saying that, I don't necessarily forgive that. I agree with what has been said here. I believe the words of His Holiness the Dalai Lama. We're all the same people. And if I believe in the rights of people in my country, I should also believe in the rights of others. As a famous former member of my party had said, until each of us has made it, none of us have made it. And so that's the principle that I abide by. And so I feel a personal responsibility, particularly having met many Tibetans in person and seen those beautiful faces. It's my responsibility to take your message, and I will definitely inquire with what the situation is. On that issue of whether or not the hypocrisy, I have to tell you that as an elected member for 11 years, one of the reasons why I'm stepping down is because I can't tolerate the hypocrisy anymore on many levels, whether it's on environment, whether it's on human rights. I profoundly believe that that should be the highest principle that we make decisions on. We're a sovereign nation. The former government actually signed a deal with China whereby Chinese, even though we don't have a trade agreement, a Chinese company is treated exactly the same as a Canadian country if they want to extract their resources. There's been lots of opposition to that. So there are lots of complications in there. I was fortunate to travel in China, I think in 1978, and I was treated very warmly. And I feel I can love Chinese people as much as I can love the Tibetan people. Sometimes just these governments get in the way, and it's our responsibility to cut through that.
So my question for you is that if I'm not mistaken, many of you got the chance to be His Holiness Dalai Lama's private outings in the morning. So my question is, what is message for you, and what you will be taking away from this visit?
I've obviously heard a lot about His Holiness before I came here. I have read up about him, I've met people who have spoken about him. But sometimes you meet somebody and then, or hear about somebody and then meet them later on and come out with a different impression. But today after meeting him, I was even more impressed about his feelings about his fellow human beings than I even was before. And he was very engaging and putting a lot of emphasis on the importance of people being recognized as being the same. And having experienced being discriminated against by the Chinese authorities, he has obviously got personal experience. And of course he knows so many of you fellow Tibetans who have gone through the same. So I came away knowing, as I said when I was speaking this morning, that he's someone who puts and encourages love between people, respect. He wants people to live with happiness and joyfulness and to cooperate. And those are the words I think I used this morning. And so when I go back, that will be a lasting impression that I have. And in the past I've been asked, who do I look up to in my life? But the question has always been prefaced with the word leader. Which leaders do you look up to? And I've always, obviously, the first thing you think about is a political leader. And I've always had a problem answering that question about who currently they could be. But after today, if I'm asked that question, I will say that no, we should broaden it beyond political leaders and just talk about leaders generally, including religious leaders. And I would definitely say that he's someone that I think everybody should look up to and everybody can learn from. And I think, for me, the best thing would be for him one day to be able to sit down with those who antagonize him and the Tibetan people, and just be able to repeat the kind of words that he said today to us. Because we are the converted. I mean, we believe very much in what he's doing and what he's trying to do. But other people need to hear him. And not only the Chinese government. I mean, all those other oppressive regimes around the world, those dictators, those leaders who demonstrate intolerance towards other people who are their opponents, they need to be able to sit down and hear for themselves their words. And I just wish we had thousands of Dalai Lamas out there who could help him spread that message of love and hope that we all need.
The message of His Holiness was that the oppression does not work in the long term, but that freedom prevails in the end, and that we need dialogue and respect. And that is the thing I will get to Germany for my work, and it was really special to meet him today, because he's not talking, he's doing it his whole life. So I'm convinced.
For me, what struck home to me is his message that, and this has been his recent talks and his writings, is that we shouldn't stick to any particular way of governing or thought. You know, we need to go beyond the tyrannies. But his love of science and the fact that we must make our decisions outside any dogma, not a religious dogma, not a political dogma, that we have to think of us as all one. And we're all the same. And if we could finally realize that, then it would cut across borders. His message is we actually would benefit everywhere far better if we actually work together in consensus. But I very much take home, I know that he is a strong defender of action for the environment, for Tibet and beyond, for action on climate. I think he talked today about Tibet as the third pole because of all of the ice. And it's the water source of Asia. I work in Bangladesh, and I know that's where the water comes from. So that was very profound to me. The message that he's saying is that we need to cut through all of those dogmas, and then we can start understanding each other and working together.
When I met His Holiness today, what I saw was a humble and very wise man. And the strongest words that I remembered from the meeting were that we all are the same humankind, and that this year should be a year of dialogue rather than conflict. But for me, the strongest moment of the whole meeting was when the Tibetan girls who accompanied us the whole time here in Ramsar met His Holiness. And they shake his hand and they got kata from him. And I actually at that time witnessed what a real leader should look like. A leader who really leads his people. I saw, you know, tears in their eyes and huge admiration. And, you know, I felt like that our top politicians in my country, the governmental politicians who are not here with us, should learn from him. Because our politicians in my country divide people rather than get them together. And this is a very precious thing that you have in His Holiness, that He puts you together, and not only you, but as you can see, He puts all the world together.
This is my first time to the Dalai Lama, and I come here to support the Tibet. Taiwan and the Tibet get the huge operation from the China, and the Tibet's experience give the significant word. The peace agreement cannot bring the peace. Only dialogue and compassion and empathy can get the peace. So this afternoon we made the His Holiness Lama. He's so calm and so wisdom, and I asked how to, yes, we through the dialogue, but the dialogue need based on mutual goodwill. But one will need another is just with violence. How can get the dialogue? But the Holiness, His Holiness the Dalai Lama said just nation, respect, mutual respect, and China has so many Chinese go abroad, and they get information of the democracy. So gradually, it will change, and we can see the Soviet situation. So don't give up the hope, and so and we will get the Tibet free and keep the Taiwan free.
Io credo che questa mattina tutti non possiamo che concordare con il fatto che il dialogo, la pace, i diritti umani sono ovviamente degli obiettivi da perseguire. Credo che tutti noi non possiamo che condividere questa cosa.
She's saying that the dialogue, the compassion, the non-violence are all messages that everybody of us can share.
Tuttavia, purtroppo, molti governi, quindi non è solo il caso della Cina, ma vanno verso una direzione che vuole fortificare i nazionalismi, dunque maldigerisce anche le condizioni di richieste di autonomia per quanto limitata.
Unfortunately, many governments in this time are seeking a kind of nationalism, and they see not very well asking for kind of autonomy, even limited autonomy.
Dunque, forse, visto che i governi comunque hanno dei cammini più complessi, più difficili, la mia è solo una proposta, già viene fatta appunto nel Parlamento europeo di avere un intergruppo di tutte le nazioni. Potrebbe essere che c'è necessità di ritrovarci invece come parlamenti internazionali per verificare quali obiettivi e quali strumenti possiamo operare insieme anche a piccoli passi per poter anche riportare all'attenzione la questione tibetana, che è una questione più complessa.
As a parliamentarian, she said that it is important that previous experience in Europe and some other countries, all the parliamentarians must work together just to ensure to find together what kind of next path next steps we can do together to, first of all, dicevi, diffondere la conoscenza.
Sì, per continuare a sostenere la causa
To
tibetana.
continue to support the Tibetan cause, this is not just for Tibet, but is for the entire humanity, I think.
Yeah.
So, because the values of Tibetan cause are for everybody, not only for Tibetan people.
So my question is, what is your message for the Tibetan people inside Tibet?
Well, it's a hard question because it's said that you can only give advice to someone that you walked 20 miles in his shoes. And I never walked in the shoes of someone who is oppressed by one of the strongest regimes in the world. My parents and my grandparents lived in a totalitarian regime for 40 years. I was 10 years old when the revolution happened and we got rid of the communist government in Czechoslovakia. And so I can only say what was taught to me by my parents and by my grandparents, and that is keep your identity. Keep who you are, keep your language, keep your songs. My grandparents were one of the best performers of traditional dances and songs in Slovakia. Both my parents were dancing and singing our traditional songs, and I've seen yesterday that the traditional dances and songs do carry the energy that is so much needed in Tibet as well. And I truly believe that there are places inside of Tibet where these songs are sung, these dances are danced, and the language is spoken. And so my message to those people who are still in Tibet would be keep on. Because the world right now is in a stage of losing identity. Liberal democracy as we know it is losing identity. I'm very unhappy as a member of the Parliamentary Assembly of Council of Europe that if we should vote on the European Chart of Human Rights tomorrow, it would probably not pass. Because so much nationalistic tensions are even in big humanitarian bodies around the world that we are losing what the Western civilization stood for hundreds of years. So we as the carriers of our own cultures, we have to work on make the best of us. And the same way people in China need to make the best of them, and people in Tibet need to make the best of them and keep their identity as long as possible, because that's the only thing they have. I've learned today that when His Holiness the Dalai Lama speaks about dialogue, we are actually tools of this dialogue, because the Chinese government talks through its embassies and its officials to us, and Dalai Lama talks to the Chinese government through us, and we are in the middle. We are the voice of you. We are the voice of Tibet, and we didn't come here to fight China. We do not fight China at home. I received a survivor of a Falun Gong movement from China that escaped from prison, and she told me the story of what happened to her, but it's not going to make me to fight China. I received the Dalai Lama in Slovakia together with Friends of Tibet, but it's not going to make me to fight China. I spoke to people who were oppressed in other countries of the world, and it's not going to make me to fight those countries, and I will remember the words of His Holiness the Dalai Lama that the dialogue is really the only way out. So I truly hope that inside of Tibet the identity will stay strong, but also discipline will be strong enough
not to cause or not to give excuse for violence. I truly hope that Tibet will regain autonomy when it comes to religion, when it comes to culture, when it comes to language, when it comes to identity, peaceful way. The way we got rid of communism in Czechoslovakia, the way Czechoslovakia was separated into two independent countries, it was a peaceful way and nobody actually saw it happen before. So my message to inside of Tibet is you need to keep who you are and wait for the sun to come up.
So it could be the message. I have met the Dalai Lama, I think, 12 times. What is not only the charisma, but also that he knows what's behind. Yes, he's responsible for religious affairs and not for political affairs, but everything has to have a very good connection. And here in your country, also it's very clear because just now what we have done, we have an excellent opportunity the whole morning, and with different views, with different argumentations, but in the end we were together. It's like being in the same family. So we are much more closer than ever. And the next point, His Holiness here opened the way for democracy, for the Tibetan people. And that's why it's a value. It's not only something to have a modern, so-called modernization. The most important is, yes, you are responsible in your country for your governments. If the government is good enough because you give them the chance to be chosen there. I had the opportunity to see the last elections when Lobsang Sangha was the winner there. I could follow it in the night. It really was great that you have a competition. That's what we need, not to fight against the others, but also to have a better opportunity. Who should be the winner? This also is very important. And another thing, all the people in your country, they should be there as strong believers because they know that other people are waiting also for you not to be silent and not to be out and to be very much integrated in this democratic process. So that's what we need. Democracy and, as you said, fighting against the radicalism. You have the way of middle way approach. Also, we should have some kind of middle way approach against the radicalism on the right side or on the left side, because they don't have any solutions. Otherwise, with dialogue, with democracy, with the opportunity to talk to each other, that's the way what we really need. This, I think, is it's a very important message, and that's why I think we should follow all our ways in our national, our different parliaments, but not the parliament or the council always fighting against the other, just the opposite. So we have an excellent base. So, and we can do it. Sometimes parliamentarians, they're much more crazy, but also on the opposite side, they are much more effective, and they can use the truth. The truth. That's what the Dalai Lama said.
For me, it was really important to talk to him about the revolution of compassion, one concept he talks about in his last book and in many interviews, because compassion usually is not a word that you find in politics. Now in politics you find fake news, you find polarization, you find different ways of separating people. And compassion is an invitation to talk through the heart and to try to get people together and talk with mutual respect to find solutions. For me, that's truly a revolution, and I'm very excited to try to be part of it in my country. I'm from Peru in Latin America. We have a very polarized political environment. So I think that we really need compassion, not only in Peru, but also in Venezuela, in Latin America, and in general in all the world.
What I learned from His Holiness today, that there comes a time in your life when you know that you've reached a boundary or your sell-by date, and you step back and you let others take the platform. and his message was he thought it was time for him to now focus more on the spiritual leadership and leave the politics to other people, because he wants to end his legacy in the manner in which he started, which was a very peaceful one. I receive quotes of the day quite often, and when I was sitting there listening to him, it was a joyful experience, but in my head I was playing over this quote, and he says, you think your problems are big, try being with a mosquito in a small room. And I was just visualizing him jumping around with that mosquito. I thank you very much for this opportunity of being here and sharing with all of you. Thank you.
So thank you very much.
Thank you.